What do you think the impact of the speech was on Congress and beyond?
I think he had really 3 points in his speech, and he was talking not just to Congress, but more broadly to the American people. One was, and he made this point several times, was to express gratitude. And again, not just to Congress, but he said to American families for the support that Ukraine has received from the United States over the past 10 months. The second point was to make clear, and I think he's correct in this war is not just about Ukraine. It's much bigger than Ukraine. It's about the question of the international rules-based order. It's a question about global security, global democracy. And so it's not just Ukraine against Russia, but the rest of the world has a big stake in how this conflict turns out. And then the third point was, though, to make clear that while Ukrainian soldiers who have shown remarkable tenacity, skill, and courage, they're prepared to continue the fight, but they're going to need the tools. And that means more arms and ammunition from the West. So I think those are the three messages, and he conveyed that in that 25-minute speech he gave to Congress.
Now, you understanding the lay of the land there and here, how important to the United States interest is what's happening in Ukraine? To me, I see it as almost an existential philosophical question for us. I mean, the time, the blood, the treasure that we spent in the Middle East when we were never going to help develop any democracy that's anywhere close to what already exists in Ukraine. What do you believe it means to us?
Yeah, I guess I would say 3 points explain the U.S. interest in Ukraine. First of all, going back for more than 70 years, the United States has had a vital national interest in a stable and secure Europe. If Russia wins in this war, we're not going to have a stable and secure Europe, and it's going to take a lot of attention, including attention from China, if that turns out that way. Second, it's the point that Zelenskyy made. There's an American interest in preserving a rules-based international order. We've profited by that politically, economically, and security terms over the last 60 years. And what Russia is doing is violating one of the principal rules, which is you do not use military force to take territory from a neighboring state. But the third point is, I don't know where Vladimir Putin's ambitions end. When he talks about Ukraine, he talks about recovering historic Russian land. In his view, most of what is modern-day Ukraine was once part of the Russian Empire, and therefore it's territory to be recovered. But if you look at maps of the Russian Empire, those maps would also include the Baltic states, most of Poland, and Finland. And in the war that Russia is fighting against Ukraine now, America is contributing money and weapons. If Putin's ambitions, if he succeeds in Ukraine, if they become emboldened, and he goes on, say, to Estonia, a Baltic state,
right,
they're a member of NATO, and it's not just going to be money and arms. We're going to be contributing the lives of American soldiers. It's in Americans' interest that Putin be stopped in Ukraine.
Why do you think Zelenskyy came now? What do you think his concern is?
I think there are a couple things. That, first of all, after 10 months, there's an opportunity to come. But I think, particularly talking to Congress, there's a little bit of nervousness in Kyiv that after 30 years, really going back to the early 1990s, where Ukraine has enjoyed strong bipartisan support from both Democrats and Republicans, that you saw some fissures develop in the Republican Party in the last 6 or 7 months. So I think part of this was an effort to bolster support for Ukraine in Congress and ensure that what is now, I think, a minority view among Republicans, that we're doing too much for Ukraine. Some have even said that, we should just cut Ukraine off, and trying to bolster the view that Ukraine should be supported in Congress. So certainly having 2 hours with President Biden where they could talk about where this war will play out, but also I think talking to Congress is an important part of his visit.
Do you think that that is just residue of Zelensky's role in the investigation of Trump, although he was just collateral damage in it, and that as Trumpism fades and they find a new face in DeSantis or whomever, that will go away?
I hope it goes away. I mean, it's really puzzling to me in that the Republicans, as a party, and the party that I knew when I was in the government in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, were very strong on a strong American international role. And those Republicans, and I think that is still the majority in the Republican Party today, they see that the American people, the American government have a vital interest in how this war in Ukraine turns out. But I do worry that you've had this wing of the Republican Party emerge, and it perhaps includes the person who may be the next Speaker of the House, that have begun to question the value of supporting Ukraine in a way that we haven't seen before. And that makes me a bit nervous.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.